Well, hello, folks. How are you doing this week? I'm so glad you're here, Nancy Cogar, and it's boomer time. And we are going to have a good time today because I got some pretty cool stuff I want to show you. Why? Well, they're old, they're a little bit dusty, but they may be worth something. And that's kind of what I wanted to emphasize today. So, question for you. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say, how about someone doing a treasure hunt in your home? What would they find? I know. I'm not talking about dust bunnies. I'm talking about stuff like this pin. Maybe you've got an old jewelry box that's got all these, costume jewelry pieces in it. Is this gold? Is it worth anything? Is it fashionable, right? What do you do with it? Or how about music memorabilia? The Beatles? Ooh, is this worth something? I got the rest of the Fab Four. So I think it might be worth something. I decided to take a look, and I thought that might help you in trying to evaluate some of the things you have around the house. I had this little baby, a McCoy. It's a real McCoy, okay? I found this in my cabinet. Do I use it? Not really. But is it valuable? Absolutely. And I'm going to show you just how valuable it is. And I was a big fan of the old LPs, records. Maybe you got some of these around the house. I bet you do. Hey, this one, Sgt. Pepper's, that can be worth some bucks. So I want you to be more particular about what you have around the house and how valuable it might be. I know I've mentioned before, even with silver, dining ware, and all the holiday china and all that, we don't really use that stuff very much anymore. But, certain patterns are pretty darn valuable. And silver itself is up to $50.79 an ounce. So these are important things to watch out for you. I've got one more for you. Here's a quiz. Do you know what this is? Well, I didn't, and I bought it because I didn't know what it was. That's just my personality. But it is a silver-plated pickle jar. Did I need it? No, but I bought it. Is it worth anything? Not sure. We'll talk about it. And I did get something I hang on to that is definitely dusty, and that's my father's old manual typewriter. So I took a look at that too. The reason being is I want to look at your personal property in a different way today. I want you to look at it as something that may be valuable, that you don't necessarily need, and you can put it to some good use. Not only that, I would tell you that personal property is one of those things that families fight about sometimes the most. So I'm going to have some free resources for you today that will help you to inventory your personal property and also maybe make some decisions about who gets what. Before I do that, though, I've got a couple headlines I wanted to run by you. And some of them may already be familiar to you, but I think that they are substantial issues, so I wanted to make sure to mention them to you. Well, the 2026 tax exemption limits have been released, and they go up every year usually, unless they lapse and fall back. But now into 2026, we have a $15 million per individual and married couples up to $30 million exemption. So if you've got $30 million, you won't be subject to estate tax, at least up to that amount. There are also annual gift tax exclusions that can remain $19,000 per individual. You can give those gifts to anyone during the year of that amount. And then there's a lifetime gift and estate tax exemption of $15 million. You can't give away more than 15. There's a new survey out. This is not really a surprise to me, people. I don't think it'll be a surprise to you, but LegalZoom, they did a survey and they found that inheritance expectations are more apart than they have been. In other words, The kids think they're going to get more than they're really going to get. They think there's more to get than there really is to get. And they call it an inheritance expectation gap. I always tell my clients, protect what you have, use it to your advantage and for your benefit. And if you have something left, then that's when we talk about how that goes. So remember, that is not the kids' retirement plan. Finally, of course, you probably know that Medicare enrollment is going on right now, and there, of course, is a whole new series of scams that are targeting seniors. So you know how I feel about scams, and I wanted to mention this. So please, please, please protect yourself. Be wary of calls. The government is not going to call you. Emails, people knocking on doors, anything that is supposedly from Medicare talking to you about enrolling in something, robocalls, saying they got better coverage for you, claiming that something you have is expiring, asking you for your Medicare number, your Social Security number, your bank account information. Don't give it to them. The enrollment runs from October 15th through to December, the first week of December. So this is a time where millions of Americans review that government health coverage, compare plans, and maybe make changes for the upcoming year. So this is very important. And if you are a child of an older adult, you might want to check with them to make sure that they make the right choices and don't get led astray by some of this stuff. So those are the headlines. And when I come back, we are going to talk about personal property. I want you to look at it differently. Sometimes it is the biggest hassle when it comes to an estate administration. And how much is all that junk worth anyway? Stick with me. Welcome back to Boomer Time. I am so glad you're here today. We are talking personal property. I know a lot of it nobody wants, but today we're going to talk about how you organize it for yourself and maybe what is valuable even before you pass away, things you might be able to use later in life. So before we do that, though, I just wanted to remind you, please, would you like and subscribe the podcast if you haven't already done that? I need to work against that algorithm. So that's why I'm always asking. But we can reach more people when we have more likes and more subscribes. And that's really all I want to do is reach more people. So will you help me with that? I'd sure appreciate it. So, okay. Now to the subject at hand. So I've talked about it before on the podcast. Nobody wants your old couch. Nobody wants your ugly chair. Nobody wants your pots, pans, most of your tools, right? Well, yeah, because they already have a house full of that stuff, right? But there are some items that I want you to take a closer look at, and I want you to maybe plan a project. You could do it with a grandkid. You could do it by yourself. You could do it room by room. Go through your house with a really critical eye and look for some things that you're so used to them being there that you don't really notice them anymore. And there may be things that, quite frankly, are more valuable than you realize. And if you're looking for a creative way or a strategic way to get more cash available for the expenses that keep going up, like prescription costs, food, healthcare benefits, clothes, gas, right? All those things. Maybe this can help with that. Plus, it can help you get organized because, believe it or not, I do estate planning for people all the time. And a lot of times, the personal property is what causes the most grief. So that's what I got planned for you. And I do have a special resource for you that's going to help you with that. And it's going to be available on my website, and it's totally free. So I'm going to give you that today. So who gets what, right? What are things worth anyway? What if nobody wants it? I've had family members die in my lifetime, and I've inherited a lot of stuff I didn't really want. That's why my basement is full, and That's why I brought some items I actually have. So I thought we could talk about those, and I'm going to let you know what I found out about the value of those. So take a closer look at your house. Maybe there's a shelf that has some things on it that you haven't thought about in a while, or maybe there's something in a drawer that you haven't seen for years. Kind of like a treasure hunt in your own house, right? I want you to inventory items. I want you to first look at those items, and with this resource I'm going to give you, all in your own handwriting, if there are items that you want to give specifically to certain people, you're going to mark those down. And that is a really good start to getting your estate plan put together. Okay? I know it sounds minor, but it really isn't. I also want you to inventory those items, of course, the second part of this, that may be more valuable than you realize. So how do you do that, right? What kind of items am I talking about? How do you know they're valuable? Well, like I said, I took a little look in my own house. I had some little dusty things, but I picked these because they're unusual, and I thought it might be a good way to show you what the value of things are. So, I'm talking about everything from old vintage cookbooks. I looked at the value of that old Julia Child. Remember her? $2,000 for a good version of that. Tennessee, right here in Tennessee, was the ratifying state that allowed women to vote. So any kind of women's suffrage materials, political campaign stuff, memorabilia, all of that is valuable. You may have it in a drawer and just don't remember. I got these numbers off eBay and auction sites, things like that. So this is what people paid for some of these items. So they may not necessarily be worth that. Somebody paid that. Concert posters, like old Elvis, Johnny Cash, they can be worth upwards of tens of thousands of dollars. Old equestrian hunting paintings, anywhere from $200 to $10,000. Everything, from collectibles to guns to first edition books, musical instruments, high-end power tools, toys, old woodworking tools, and jewelry. So this little item is just a run-of-the-mill, vintage costume pin. Probably got a bunch of them in a drawer. So is this worth anything? Well, you might be surprised, actually, because depending on the type, the brand, and its features, there's people that collect that stuff, and they can be worth quite a bit of money. $50 here, $50 there. And if it has real gemstones in it, then it's worth even more. I mentioned gold is at $4,097 an ounce. So look for that gold that you have from broken chains and things like that. That might be worth trading in. And like I said, it could be a fun family project. And maybe you do it with your granddaughter. You look for things, and you might find some stuff about your things that you really didn't realize. So remember the items I showed you at the beginning of the episode? I want to take a closer look at those, and I'll let you know kind of what I found. So I'm grabbing the one that's most near to me, and it is this McCoy pottery bowl. Like I said, sometimes I put lemons in it, but I don't really do very much with it. So these McCoy, if it says McCoy on the bottom, they can be worth quite a bit. This particular one looked like it was worth $20. So not a lot, but if it's a sought after brand and it's in good condition, I don't see any chips or anything like on this one, they can be $500 plus per item. So do that a little bit, and that can result in some real money, right? Memorabilia. So I showed you my little bobblehead guy from the Fab Four. This little guy and his three friends sold for $1,500. So I wouldn't mind that, right? And, believe it or not, the other thing I found out while I was looking at this is there's a national Bobblehead Hall of Fame. Who knew, right? It's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Have you ever been there before? If you have, let me know. Sounds interesting, and there were some pictures online that I thought, that would be an interesting place to go. Now, what about silver? You know, silver's up like gold is, not as high, of course, but we don't really use silver anymore. This is a fork from my mother's silver set, okay? It says Reed and Barton on it, and it says sterling, and it's got flowers and so forth. These can be quite valuable, actually, upwards of $1,000 a piece, possibly, depending on the style, the set, and so forth. But you may want to look at that. I know silver's not as fashionable as it was once, but could be a lot of it. And if you're not attached to it, think about doing something with it. Here's another one, a little spoon, also sterling. This doesn't look like it's seen the light of day anytime recently. But you get what I'm going at. Old records, $290 for this Sgt. Pepper's. Not bad, not bad. And old custom jewelry, well, maybe $10, maybe $1. But if it's stamped, if it's part of a sought-after vintage, maybe $50 around there. And precious stones, of course, have their own value. So, that's just an idea. If you put some of those things together, I've got about $2,500. So, hey, that's not anything to shake a stick at as far as I'm concerned. And it's just thinking about things differently. I want, if you feel stuck, I don't want you to be stuck. I want you to think about how you can use the things around you in a proactive way to help you. So, every category, whether it's pottery, whether it's collectibles, whether it's records, jewelry, all those things. If you're looking for a value, rather, on some of these items, I've got a couple resources for you. One of them that I looked at was Value My Stuff. Take it for whatever it's worth. I do want to invite a guy here in my hometown here that I do quite a bit of business with, and he is a certified appraiser. So he can value all kinds of things, everything from land to real estate to jewelry, guns, all those things. So if you've got some things that you think they may be valuable, hey, let me know about it. And maybe you can come on the show when I bring them in. I'm going to do that early next year. So that might be kind of fun. What do you think? So these things, of course, like anything else, depends on, you got a complete set, that's usually more valuable. Is it damaged, right? Does it still work? Is it attractive, or is it, there's a reason it was put in a drawer, right? Does it have a maker's mark? I mentioned that before. A plate, a mark, a label. Is it got a number? Is it authentic, right? Is it a reproduction? Is it real? I know I've got lots of jewelry that looks real, but oftentimes it's not. So all these items have value. Sometimes it's not worth anything really, but sometimes it is. And, like I said, these items that I showed you from my drawers and shelves, that's about $2,500, right? That's a measurable amount. How do you find out how valuable something is? Well, there's a lot of factors with that. One online appraisal service that I ran across is called Value My Stuff. You could use that just to get a ballpark, but it really kind of depends on whether you've got a complete set. Does it have the original patina? Is it part of a set? What's the condition, right? Is something broken or damaged? Has it been well cared for? Does it still work? You know, a lot of those antique toys and banks and things like that. Does it still work? Is it attractive? You know, if it's ugly as sin, there's probably a reason it was put in a drawer and forgotten about. Right? But does it have a maker's mark? You know, does it have a label? Is it numbered? Those things matter. Provenance. You know, you hear that provenance on Antique Roadshow. You know, that means what's the story behind it? Who's owned it over the years? Was it owned by somebody interesting? Was the story behind it interesting? Is it associated with a famous person? How'd you get it? You know, right in my area here, there's so much Civil War history that I'm sure there's some items that have a particularly interesting history. One thing I did not share today, and, you know, maybe I can, is my grandfather. I've got a picture of my grandfather on my father's side with Charles Lindbergh. You know who Charles Lindbergh is, right? He's the man that flew across the Atlantic. So they were actually grade school friends. My grandfather grew up in Minnesota, and they knew each other. I never knew my grandfather, but I love that picture because I know who Charles Lindbergh is. I recognize him, and I see my grandfather, and it's got an interesting history to it. So maybe I can get that up, pop it up, and let me know what you think. You know, and these items have demand, or they're not. Are there a ton of them? You know, and then maybe the item that causes the most issues for families is the sentimental value. It may not be monetarily valuable, but is it sentimentally valuable to you? Those are the kinds of things that I see that often can cause disputes, right? So if you want to avoid some of that, check out my website, nancycogar.com, and there is going to be a free resource there that will help you with an inventory and specific designations of personal property to individuals. So I think that's a really great start towards getting your estate plan together, and could be fun, right? So other specific resources for value, of course, there's eBay. And eBay will tell you not only the value, the asking price, but it'll tell you who actually paid what and how long did that take. There are a couple others I'm not really familiar with, Google, Lens, and Curio, that are apps that will give you snapshot values. I'm a real Antiques Roadshow junkie, really. And I think I've seen every single episode, but there is always something interesting there. And they travel around. They've been here in my hometown. I'm sure probably been close to where you are. And I think they're working on their 2026 season. So maybe there's something you want them to check out. Sotheby's and Christie's, the big boys, they offer online estimates. Has to be something of some value, I would think. Local auction houses, and then certified appraisers. And I mentioned before, I've got an appraiser here that I use quite often. He can value everything from real estate to guns to artwork, all that kind of stuff. So I think I'm going to try to have him come in and share on a future show. Maybe I'll let him look at some of these items. Hey, if you've got an item at home, and send me a picture of it. Tell me what it is. Maybe you can come on the show and then see what my appraiser thinks of your item, and you can tell us a little bit about it. I love the stories behind those things. So I hope you found this helpful. I think it's helpful. If it's helpful, let me know. Let me know what kinds of things you want to hear about. I tried to keep it a little bit light today. This is estate planning, disguised as showing you junk, show and tell from my house. But, you know, these things are important, and I want you to be prepared. So I wanted to share one last story before I go about the typewriter. Right? Because that's got a good story behind it. At least I think so. The old manual dusty typewriter. Well, that was my father's typewriter. And see, I'm keeping that. That's got sentimental value to me. My father used to pound on that manual typewriter. He had the big knuckles to prove it, but he never got an electric. And later in life, he had a computer, but still had the manual typewriter. And he used to write me letters when I was in school. See the little manual type. So it means a lot to me. It's not worth very much. Said what, like $600 maybe. But the stories matter. They do. And your story matters. So that's why I want you to get your estate plan done. You need to have your legacy prepared and documented in a way that it can be safe, secure, and according to your wishes, right? So, well, that about does it for today on Boomer Time. Got some strange item. I'd love to see it. So let me know, and I'll see you next time.